What's up, everybody? It's Jesse of Card Power Gaming, and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about new game mechanics. Now, game mechanics are always very difficult to introduce into TCGs and CCGs of the like, because you don't want to introduce something that's so overly broken it's going to break the game. But I thought this would be a really cool discussion, especially just you know, since we haven't really had anything like that in the game yet for Dragon Ball Super. We really haven't had a mechanic that gains life or anything like that. So I always thought, you know, well, to gain life, you'd have to take cards from the top of your deck that would throw off your combos and that would throw off all those different things, you know, to gain life and stuff. Well, what if instead of that, right, instead of having to gain life by taking cards from the top of your deck, putting it in your life, and disrupting what's already in your deck and things like that, why don't we introduce damage counters? Now, damage counters are really cool because basically what they're going to do is they're going to soak up damage. So let's say you play a card, right, maybe 1, 2, or 3 energy, and its ability is maybe you have to discard a card or something. It has an additional cost because obviously gaining life can't be cheap, to give your leader a damage counter. And now that damage counter is kind of like pseudo life. It's adding life to your leader. So in that regard, if let's say my leader is Son Goku, right? So you got Son Goku, right? And let's say I'm at 4 life, right, or whatever, and I have 3 or 4 energy. Let's say I play, I don't know, maybe a 4 or 3 drop, whose ability is discard a card and gain counters. So you would maybe use a 6-sided die to then represent the number of damage counters on that leader. Now, damage counters, of course, would mean just that's how much damage they can take before they start taking life. I have this example. Go ahead and check it out. So to give you an idea of what it would look like, let's just take a scenario where we have our Goku leader who is awoken, 4 life, and 3 untapped energy, right? Let's say we start our turn and we want to go ahead and maybe charge a card. So we're going to go ahead and charge our Gohan, just, you know, for reasons. And let's say that we have this Vegeta in our hand, right? But instead of this being a Vegeta, it's just a 3-drop that gives a damage counter, let's say. So in this scenario, let's say I tap 3 to play this Vegeta. Okay, the red 3-drop Vegeta. But he has a completely different effect, where instead of what he does now, his effect would be discard a card to give your leader 1 damage counter. So let's say maybe we want to discard Confident Batamo, right? So we ditch Batamo into our drop area. And we take our 6-sided die and use a 3-drop, and he gives 1 damage counter to Goku. Now, our Goku has 1 damage counter, essentially meaning we have 5 life again. However, we don't get cards, so it's not disrupting cards from our deck. However, that damage we take is not cards we're getting either, so it's not adding to our hand when we use these damage counters. And that would be kind of like the backside to it as well, is it's just meant to absorb damage. The same way you could discard, it could give 2 counters. So the same way, you know, every strike would get rid of 1 damage counter. So if I have 2 damage counters and they dealt something with double strike, I would lose both counters immediately and just go back to having 4 life. But it would be like I had 6 life, because instead of taking the 2 life and adding them to my hand or whatever, it would just take the 2 here. This would make crit kind of bad as well, because if they're using critical, they want to save it for when they hit your life, not your damage counters, which I think is pretty cool. It gives another backside to critical, something where they have to play around these counters. And the same thing, you could introduce effects where maybe you play a card and maybe that card can say spend a damage counter, this card gains critical or something like that, or maybe you spend 2 counters, this card gains critical, you know, things like that. And that way you introduce a new mechanic that's essentially like a pseudo version of gaining life, but it doesn't disrupt your deck, and it's not really, you're not gaining more cards just from them hitting you, and it makes their critical less good in that regard, and everything's still balanced in that sense, I believe. And of course, you don't want to make it too busted because you don't want them to get too much life, but I mean, if you don't hit them, then of course they can just keep gaining more and more damage counters, and that's more damage counters you have to hit off of them. So yeah. So yeah, guys, what do you think? Do you think that'd be a really cool thing for this game, or do you think maybe it'd be a little too broken? It's just something I wanted to touch up on. It's an idea I had going in my head, and I really wanted to just kind of elaborate on it because I thought it'd be super cool to really have that introduced into the game instead of maybe like life gaining in a way that we all thought of, where just take cards from the top of your deck, put it into your life, you know what I mean? And that way you don't disrupt what's already in your deck and things like that. But I think having cards that play around with damage counters could be really cool too, you know? Like take 2 damage counters off your leader, this card gains double strike, or this card gains critical, you know what I mean? Take 1 damage counter, this card gains X, you know? I think that'd be a really cool game mechanic, and it would really add to the game. You start playing around with things like that. But anyway, guys, remember to comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.